Hello, one and all, and welcome to Theatre Macabre. Today, we're going to be starting off by talking about one of the most vile, decrepit, and wretched forms of tabletop wargames there is. And no, I do not mean a grim far future filled with endless war, nor do I mean a crusade amongst the trenches of some alternate history World War I. No, I'm talking about a more potent and virulent tonic, and that is the tabletop wargame known as Forbidden Psalm. So, if you do not know what Forbidden Psalm is, let me introduce you, let me induct you into the world of ultimate adaptable wargaming. And by that, what do I mean? Well, Forbidden Psalm is one of the most condensed, approachable, and in that adaptable forms of tabletop wargames there is. And that is because it is based on the role-playing game Mörk Borg. Mörk Borg is an art part, grime-fueled, heavy metal-inspired tabletop role-playing game, which in its simplicity, in its ultimate commitment to the bit of grim, dark horror, it has created a system that allows for an ultimate plethora of options and choices and adaptable solutions that people have come up with, including Forbidden Psalm. I mean, if you go to Ex Libris on the internet, it's a resource for all the supplements and add-ons that people have made for Mörk Borg, and the list is in the thousands. It is an incredible game, and because of that, Forbidden Psalm is equally so, and has continued this idea of adaptability, because not only out of the box Forbidden Psalm takes you to a grim horror fantasy setting such as Mörk Borg, but you could also take 28 Psalms and have fun in the far future of endless war, let's say, or even a more medieval past that is tinged with chaos beasts. Or you could take endless horrors from Between the Stars, where you form a cult and summon an evil creature from the beyond and enact the apocalypse. Or you could take Horse War, where you must fight the endless war for the Horselands. And if you want to have a horse wizard, you must have a horse miniature with a hat. And if its hat falls off, you can no longer cast spells. But that's not all, because you could also take it to the trenches of an alternative world war. You can take it to the Victorian times. You can take it to Napoleonics. Whatever you so wish, this game allows, because it has a very simple, understandable set of rules on which you can build any platform. Because you can throw away all your other A4 pages with double stacks of text that ream off thousands and thousands of conditions, because no, it doesn't have that. It has about 3, maybe 2 pages of A5, depending on which one, filled with about a couple of dozen of conditions. You only have one set of dice pretty much you're going to be rolling most of the time, and then you're going to be dealing damage in a really easy way, and you only need 5 models, and that's where it gets even more exciting. Because the thing that attracts me the most to this game is the fact that it encourages, more than anything, for you to kitbash. Now, if you watch this channel, you know I'm an avid kitbasher, and I think in the community there are 2 types of people. Well, maybe not 2, but there is a big proponent of the hobby who just like to get all the plastic crap they've got left together and smash it all into one thing that is just a horrific little being. And that is what this game asks of you. It asks you to make just little creatures that you're going to take out and just chuck at the most horrific situations. And I don't know about you, but in kitbashing, yes, sometimes I do like to have an idea in mind, and I want to make an alternate form of Varangard by sticking lots of actual other pieces together to try and mainly save some money. But one of the things I really do enjoy is just sort of jamming, like scatting, just sort of improvising a model, just getting all the random little bits that I have left over and just sort of seeing what fits and what makes sense to me to just slowly create some sort of just horrific little thing. And it's just the most gorgeous creations that I make are those sort of jam sessions of interpretation, or sort of like summoning from the ether this being out of nothing into creation. That is the sort of kitbashing I really do enjoy. And this is what that game does, because it doesn't officiously denounce upon you, this must be a chaos knight. It can just be whatever it needs to be, and it allows you in the random rolling tables and the pre-generated sort of sets of stats that you can choose from to allow you just to apportion those however they work to whatever you've created. Of course, you can work it the other way. You can roll those tables before, you can choose those stats in advance and then build the characters after the fact. But the fact that you can retroactively reverse that, I'm so much more on board. And so, as this has been a predominantly Warhammer channel, we're going to start with their latest release, which is the 28 Psalms. This was actually made in conjunction with 28 Mag, I don't know if you know that, but it is a glorious plethora of kit-bashing, picture perfection, splashed across the pages of graphic design beauty and grime, added on with a sprinkle of John Blanche on every single page. It is wonderful and glorious, and one of my ultimate goals is to get something featured in that magazine. It's just stunning. And so we're going to be taking this book, taking a look at the rules and proving to you how easy and approachable and adaptable this game is in this one, because not only does it take you to the grim far future, it also takes you to the grim heretical past. And so we can take a look at that, and we can maybe build ourselves some warbands in some later episodes and maybe even do a battle report. But later on from that, I would love to do one of these builder cults and Summer's Night from the Beyond, from Endless Horrors from the Between the Stars. And if people are enjoying it, maybe we will get on to Horse War and start making some horses. But that's it for now. Why don't we get in and take a look at how this game works and what is Forbidden Psalm. So Forbidden Psalm starts pretty easily. You get a little table at the beginning for some funky names, and then it introduces you to Forbidden Psalm in a way that may be familiar to some of you. So I will read that to you now. In the bleak gloom of the far future, or possibly the distant past, small bands of freaks, crazed cultists, doombringers and worse, undertake the work of the Dark Lords. In these dark times, in the deepest corners of the realms, battles for resources, ancient relics, and loot take place. And then it tells you how it is related to the system of Morkborg and how this 28 Psalms is a more condensed version of Forbidden Psalm. But anyway, it's actually got everything you'd need pretty much to get going in that game. But I recommend picking them all up. And then it tells you pretty much in 6 simple ways how you get about it. You just need to pick 5 models, you need to allocate their stats, you need to roll a feat and then a floor, and then you need to allocate HP and movement value, and then use your 50 credits to buy equipment and armor, and you're done. That is pretty much it. That's you make a warband. No huge army lists and figuring out points and all this stuff. It's very simply written right there. So then you come on to stats. Now you will see there are 2 different stat options it gives you that you choose from, and then you apportion them to the 4 different stats down here. So the 2 you could choose from are, you've got a +3, a +1, a 0, and a -3, or you've got a +2, a +2, a -1, and a -2. Now, if you're intelligent enough to do some maths, you can add up both of those sets and realize you end up with a cumulative value of +1. Now, I can't see any reason why you couldn't go and just readdress the balance of those, never going more than +3, never going under -3, to make a stat range that adds up to +1. But those are the ones that choose for. Let's not get too complicated. That is it. So what to start off with? It starts off with agility, which deals with agility-based attacks, and your movement, which is 5+ agility. And then it gets onto presence, which deals with casting spells. It also deals with ranged attacks, and it also deals with your morale checks, which you'll probably know from many other war games. And then we get on to strength, which deals with your strength-based attacks and equipment slots, because you get 5+ strength for your equipment slots, and that is how much equipment you can take, armor values you can take, etc. And strength also will affect what kind of armor you can have, because there's a couple of armors in there where you need to have at least 3+ strength, I think it is for plate mail, in order to be able to even just wear that or equip it. And then finally you've got toughness, which deals with your health and constitution-based stuff, which is 8+ toughness equals your hit points, which is what it comes onto the next page. So we're already pretty much there on selecting and creating our characters. And then you've got your floors and your feats. You roll a d10 for each, and you choose and pick 1 for each of your characters, and you get some fun additional flavor for your characters and some things that are going to make it easier and harder for you on the battlefield. And these are more fun and thematic because they're based on slightly jokey things to do with 28 Psalms in some ways. There's a whole thing about cheese. But what I'm going to say additional to this, you can obviously roll, and that's how you can build your character. But as I said before, if you've made some sort of priestly witch hunter character, they'll probably want to choose worship, where every time you activate you must roll a d6. On a 1 you don't do anything, you just sit there and pray to your heretical god. And that's a lot of fun, and you can see how much thematicness there is. And if you take some time to look at them, I'm sure with your friends you could come up with a dozen more of these to add to the selection there. And if you're building something, I'm sure you can reflavor these or build your own that fit with that horrific little creature you've made that you want to take out into the world. Then, as I said, you've got the equipment. Equipment is easy. You've got 5 plus your strength, you've got 50 creds, and you spend it as you so wish. This book gives you the options of both past and future tech. There's a few additional things, like if you want to make a witch, someone that can cast spells, you're going to need to use some of those points. You only get that set number of equipment slots. You'll see some things have additional equipment slots, more than one. Some of them require you to have different strength, like for example, as I said, with armor, and it sometimes says like a two-handed weapon will take up 2 slots, for example. It's pretty simple. And then you'll see on the weapons, there's hardly any abilities and additional notes to put on. There's reload, there's range, there's AF, which means automatic fire. So you'll see there's one here that says AF2. That means you get to roll 2 dice to see if you succeed. It doesn't mean you get 2 shots, it means you get basically advantage on the roll. However, if you do fumble, which we'll come on to, which is like a critical failure, so roll a 1 on at least one of them, it definitely does fail. But it's a pretty cool little system, very simply laid out, and as I said, not many different conditions and things to be thinking about. And I can prove that to you on the next page. And there's this one, states and properties. As you can see, there is literally just 2 sides of A5 with states and properties. You've got a few different things here. Automatic fire, as I already mentioned. You've got burn, which is just going to happen when you have a burn condition from using a flamer. You've got other things like darkness, which is pretty much what it says on the tin. You know, it's really just this to get yourself all you need to know on the table. A quick thumb to one page in the book to know, not like, oh my gosh, is this my Escher Gang gun? Okay, so I need this, oh, it's a special one from there, so I need to roll it, get my Escher Gang book out, find that page, oh yeah, that condition means this. No, thank God there is none of that. You are on the table, you are just looking at one page and you're there, and you're pretty much probably going to remember all of them by the time you played a couple of games. So then we come on to magic. Now magic is very simple. Again, you just need to, you get to choose your scrolls from the page opposite, and then you get to use them throughout the game as many times you like. All you need to do is roll a DR12 present check, which means you have to roll over a 12 on a D20. You get to use your modifier for presence onto that, so if you are going to be going for some sort of priest, I would suggest maybe chucking your +3 in there for that. And if you fail or under the 12, or you go actually get a critical failure, you will take on a tragedy. And then if it is a critical failure, you must immediately roll on the calamity table, which is the sort of arcane catastrophes, which is known in Morkborg, that horrific things will happen to your character straight away. And tragedies, to let you know, are you just numbers that you add on to your roll when you roll on that critical calamity table, which is basically just going to make it slightly worse, and you get up to a maximum of 10 of those tragedies, and they stack and they stay forever. You can't cast spells if you've got armor value over 2, so you can't be a big paladin bulky knight, and this calamity table is a lot of fun. Number 8 particularly is a favorite. It has intellectual property, and it means that you've got a cease and desist letter, and your model has been called in for questioning and therefore has been removed from all existence from the game and is lost forever. And the scrolls are really great. You've got fun ones like you can steal health from someone else and take it to you. You can also move other characters around. It's, you know, your general simple fare of magical manipulation of the board, and it's a lot of fun. And then how you actually play the game is equally as simple. Look, all you do is get 2 foot by 2 foot board, you then roll a d20 each, whoever gets the highest goes first, and then you deploy your units on within 6 inches of the edge of the board that you have been determined to be on in alternative deployment. So whoever rolled first gets to deploy first, then the other, then back and forth until you've got all of your 5 models each on the board. And then each round you roll for initiative again, same thing, and then you activate one by one until all of them have had a go, and that's the round done. Scenarios will have different setup rules. Some of them will be defending from the center, some of them will be coming in and attacking, but the baseline is this if you want to get started. And then from then on, whatever you have to do, like attacking or casting spells we've already talked about, you roll your d20, use your modifier. If you get over a 12, it's done. Unless it's a contested one, unless there's something particular to your like automatic fire, as I talked about before, where you get to roll 2 d20s and see if you get over 12 on one or the other. But that's the baseline rule. It's rolling a d20, getting over 12, and you're done. And the game ends either by the scenario or until everyone's dead. That's it. I mean, it can't be much more simple. And that's really what all these big books are about at the end of the day. That's why this is so good. Because actually what you realize is that all the other gumph that's chucked on top of all these games boils down to alternate activation and having good dice rolls. That's it. But the fact that this is just one dice roll with one DR all the time, but you just use some modifiers here and there to help you along, and a couple of different conditions to make the difference, is all you need. Because everything else in this game is going to come from the fun and the flavour of the settings, the scenarios, the models you've brought to the table, and the friends you have there with you. That's what wargaming is really, really about, isn't it? You know, for me, I know a lot, I mean, actually, that's not fair. I know there's a good proportion of the community who love crunchy rules, who really like to get into the strategies of it. But if you're here for just a good, fun old time and having some fun with some really crazy, creepy models and being with your friends and not stressing out about buckets and buckets of books that you need to bring with you and having a bad back from it, this is such a good game, right? Gah. And yes, there are more rules to this game. I just can't help myself talking about how simple this is. But yes, okay, if you want to move, you just use your 5+ agility. If you get to a wall, then you want to go vertically, you just half the movement value that you have. So for every 2 inches you have, you go 1 inch vertically. Very simple. When you're doing combat, if you get into melee range, which is in 1 inch, you still do you roll your d20, you have to hit a 12, but if you're in melee, your opponent also gets to have another go after the fact with -3 to their roll. So they get to roll a d20, they have to -3 from the result. If they then get over 12 still with that -3, they then hit you back. And it's pretty simple on that. You then deal your damage, which is you roll the damage dice, which is appropriate for the weapons. So some are d6s, some are d4s. I think they go up as far as d12s, and you deal your damage to your opponent, and you take off any armor value. So if they got an armor value of 2, you just -2 from whatever that is. There's no like armor save. It's just literally, I've made my number, I've hit the roll, and you just don't take 2 damage because you've got an armor value of 2. It's really easy. You just make the one roll, and if you hit, you hit. And if you do the damage, you do damage, you just take off what the armor saves them. And then ranged attacks have a 12-inch standard distance. If you're within melee combat, so within 1 inch, you have to take a -3, but for both of them, you roll a d20 and you have to get over 12. If they're in cover, they also gain -3 to that roll, so you have to get over 12 with a -3. And if you successfully hit, you roll your damage, you take off the armor value, and you take 1 off your ammo slot. And if you have to reload, you're going to have to do the reload action. If it's a thrown weapon, you get 6 inches, and it's a very similar thing again. And if you've got down models, you can drag them off the board so they don't get killed. And if you are in melee combat and you want to try and leave that, the person who's trying to stop you must roll a DR12 agility, which means you got to get a 12 on a d20 to stop you from moving away. If they succeed, you can't go anywhere. If they critically successfully succeed, then they get to have another attack at you. But if they fail, you get to run away. And if they fumble, you get to run away and also get an action in addition. There are then hacking rules if you're going to be going into that grim, dark future. And then there are the 2 final roles you need to know, which are morale checks and what happens when you're down and taking injuries. First up with morale, it's a very simple d20 presence check, and you have to get over a 12. You have to do this when you are hit critically, or if you try and hit someone who is already down. So you want to do that dirty deed and kill them on the board. You must make this presence check. If you succeed, you stay on the board, you're fine. If you fail, you flee the board and you're out. You then, additionally, with this downed and these injury tables, when you are downed, when you have 0 hit points, you face the model up and they stay on the floor. If they are hit once more, they are killed instantly and you face them down on the board. But you, as we said, you could drag them off and try and save them. And if you get to the end of the scenario with 0 hit points, you're still downed. You must save on a death save, which is a DR6, so you have to roll over 6 on a D20. And if you do, you then gain an injury table roll. So you roll one of these. So you can get saddened, which is -1 to presence, or broken, which gives you -1 to strength, etc. And there's loads of other fun ones there. But if you critically succeed that death save and you get a 20, you then get to not only get an injury, but a free feat. You learn something new, as it says on the board. And that is all of the rules for this game, to play the game. In this book, there are other additional things that you can bring to the table, such as monsters. Monsters all have baseline stats of 0, so you just roll d20s and have to hit over 12. They've got some HP and they've got some attacks and they get some specials, and there are some fun little monsters and critters that you can use. Not only are there rats, but there's also cyber pigs, there are copyright lawyers, there are gangers, there are cultists, you name it, they're there, and they're great for sort of asymmetrical play. You could either be controlling them, or you could be together in co-op mode fighting against them, or you could, some of the scenarios will have them like summoned, or you can summon them sometimes with powers, and they're a fun additional part of the game. And that additional like co-op rules and solo play rules are actually in this book. There's loads of alternate play rules in this game. Again, it's only a couple of pages of additional text, but if you want to do that, you want to just get on the table yourself and fight some monsters or fight against alternating warbands that's there. And for the monsters themselves, there's this lovely flowchart table telling you how they will react. So your own GM in the book to run the monsters for you to play against, which is pretty awesome. And it says if you're going to be doing solo play against the other, like another warband that's being controlled not by you, or you're against them, then you can, it just says things like, well, they will always go for the main action and they will always try and attack the person that attacked them last, etc., etc., whoever's closest. So it's quite simple system for solo play. And then finally, in this book are the Dark Lords. I love these Dark Lords. I'm just going to read out a couple of them. You can choose to have these as part of your gang if you want to go down that chaos road, and they're fun. So you have Lords of the Soil, those that work with the foul effluence of mankind. These lords want nothing more than the brown gold of the world, for the filth of others is the riches for them. Warband members working for the Lords of the Soil are -1 to hit with ranged weapons as swarms of flies obscure them. Or Lords of Avarice, those that want nothing more than to acquire wealth as a means to exert power over others. Warbands gain 50 credits to spend at the end of each scenario they play. Or the Lords of Pasteurization, from foul beasts the milk is gathered and turned into the cheese that is prized by all in the realm. Warband members gain free cheese at the start of each scenario if they have equipment slots free. And cheese, by the way, is just a little equipment, a health potion, basically gives you +1 HP if you eat it. And that's everything that's in this book. And I haven't told you the best bit yet. It is free. You can get a PDF of this right now, free. I'll put links in the show notes below. But Will is an absolutely wonderful guy. And if you do have the coin, please do go and support them by buying the full Forbidden Psalm book, because it's great. You will enjoy it. Getting a physical copy if you can is amazing. Also, Endless Horrors Between the Stars is really good, and we're going to be looking at that later on, but I think we'll just do that as an actually making a cult and making our horrific being from the beyond together, because I think that's going to be a lot of fun, to be honest. But that is everything for today, but please do go check out everything Mortborg, everything Forbidden Psalm, and until next time everyone, this has been Theatre Macabre, and we can't wait to welcome you again. Bye everyone.